very good morning and welcome to yet another exciting edition of your favorite Sunday morning weekly news analysis program. That's Media Monitor. We're bringing it live to you here on the SABC News channel. Good morning. I'm your host, Alisha Ajali. Thank you so much for choosing Channel 44. This is what you can look forward to in this hour. We start by looking at outspoken NC MP Dr. Makhosi Khoza's axing from the Parliamentary Committee. SABC Foreign Editor Sophie Mokoena plans to join us live from the SADC summit that is currently taking place in Pretoria to give us some of the highlights of that summit. And we also know that Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane lost that Bankorp court bid against the South African Reserve Bank this past week. We'll also dig deeper into the implications of this. And finally, of course, we have to look at the Marikana commemoration 5 years after the tragedy, and it just seems no justice for the families of the 34 miners that lost their lives at the hands of South African police. But first, as always, it's 900 hours. These are your news making headlines. The Transport Department says both South African Airways and Air Zimbabwe have now submitted their foreign operators permits that are required by the international aviation regulations. All flights between Johannesburg and Harare were grounded yesterday due to non-compliance in this regard. Transport Minister Joe Maswanganye held an emergency meeting with aviation entities last night to try and resolve the impasse. South African Airways yesterday cancelled all 8 flights to Zimbabwe. Maswanganye has apologized for the inconvenience that might have been caused to the passengers. Former Deputy Education Minister Mduduzi Manana's resignation has been welcomed by all political parties. Manana stands accused of assaulting a woman outside a Johannesburg nightclub. Rights groups are up in arms saying he flagrantly violated the rights of women. And in his own words, Manana said that there was no excuse in the world to justify his assault on the women. He described his actions as utterly shameful. Manana will appear in court again on the 13th of next month. And South Africa opened their rugby championship account with a very convincing 37-15 victory over Argentina out in Port Elizabeth. The Boks outscored the Pumas 4 tries to 2 with 5-pointers from Kurtnell Skosen, Raymond Rule, Sia Kolisi and Peter Steven du Toit. Alton Yankees converted all 4 tries and kicked 3 penalties. The national team will meet Argentina again next weekend in the South American country. All right, let's welcome here with me to give us all the latest hashtags of this week is SABC Digital News producer, Mr. Oguhle Magdaba. Oguhle, good morning.
Hi, how are you doing?
You look so warm. I'm almost jealous. I'm about to grab that jacket.
I do not like the cold. Let's put it like that.
Absolutely. All right, Let's welcome the main guest today. On the main set, I do have media analyst, Mr. Dominic Mahlangu, as well as Mr. Shoni Makari. Gentlemen, what a pleasure to have you both on such a cold morning. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. And thank you for
Sean
having
is
us.
like me, he's braving the cold. Give us the biggest hashtag of this week. It's all for beauty.
Well, to start off today, we will be looking at Mduduzi Manana's resignation and actually what people had to say on social media. So a statement came out yesterday saying that he's decided to resign. But a lot of people are not necessarily chuffed or happy about the fact that he resigned. With Nkululeko Yetu saying South Africa was Mduduzi Manana has resigned. He is correcting his behavior and knows he cannot be in office after committing such an offense. And then someone says, Mduduzi Manana resigns. I guess there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And then there is one last person who's like, Mduduzi Manana's resignation is nothing to applaud. Our leadership and systems failed us in holding his actions accountable. They failed us. That's from Vukile.
All right. Well, absolutely interesting that, there's Namudi Calvin says that we cannot rejoice over Deputy Minister Mduduzi Manana's resignation.
Yes,
he was supposed to be fired. Yes. Gentlemen, what do you think about these assertions on Twitter? Dominic, let's start with you.
No, I think that
Alicia, sorry, I think, you can expect such views from South Africans.
Yeah.
You can never please everyone.
Yeah.
But I think the Deputy Minister took a high road, and he had to come to that decision. But at the end, I will say that you can't satisfy everyone.
Yeah, that's true. Sean, he's resigned. What more do people want? Isn't that what they were calling for?
I guess they were asking, they would have preferred that he did it earlier. However, he still, in my view, he still did the right thing.
Yeah.
Taking the thunder away from, unfortunately, our missing in action president, because the president should have taken the action first. But clearly, as I said, he's missing in action.
All right. Let's go to the next big hashtag.
And the next
what do you have for us?
The next one was obviously the Marikana commemorations.
Yes,
It's been 5 years since the Marikana tragedy. And a lot of people had a lot to say about the tragedy, and also they sent their own condolences with Tato saying there has been not a single arrest over the murders. The government is yet to compensate destitute families. And then we also have another tweet said, on this day, poor miners died at the hands of their own caring government, lest we forget.
Do we have more tweets, Ogusha?
And then there's Bayabonga, who says, today it's 5 years down the line since our brothers and uncles were gunned down in Marikana. South Africa is a banana shame. So as you can see, there's mixed views about
very mixed reactions indeed. I mean, but I think what resonates with everybody there, Dominique, is the fact that a lot of people feel that, we still really don't know what the resolution was after Marikana, even though we've had the commissions of inquiry, but it seems like justice is still eluding the people that it should be serving. What do you think?
No, I think, after the commission, we're expecting that the heads will roll.
Yeah.
But 5 years down the line, not even a single person is in prison. And, I concur with South Africans who are saying that we need answers because of so many people died. Not only the 34 that died, but also the 10 that died before.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we need justice, to prevail in this matter. It's not going to go away.
It's not going to go away. Shani, what do you think it's going to take for this matter to go away?
Well, I think, obviously, there's got to be some level of compensation, be it from government or from non-men. I don't know who's ultimately going to be held responsible.
Yeah.
But something has to be done in terms of compensation to those families. And I'm just surprised that it's taken this long.
Interestingly enough, the widows were actually pushing for a reinvestigation of all those that were accused. But we'll get to talk about that much later on in the show. Oguhle,
yes.
Give us our last and final big hashtag of this week. What was happening on the
one of the biggest hashtags was Makhosi Khoza's axing. So she was
after the no-show in Parliament. People just boycotted her sitting, and then she gets fired after that.
She gets
what
axed.
Are we looking at here, Oguhle?
There's a tweet that says the ANC refuses to remove someone who abused women, but quick to remove a woman who stands for the truth. That is from hashtag Sophie Mokoena. And then there's another one that says the message is clear. Those who stand for the right thing will be punished. Those who do the wrong thing will be rewarded. Hashtag Makhosi Khoza.
Look, let's look at this one here. CJ Neo says, even if she did vote in support of the motion, they are actually in breach of contracts or oath. They look as MPs when taking office. Let's take another quick one from Paul Klassen. What is he saying there?
It's like you can beat up women, but you get suspended for criticizing the emperor.
Very interesting.
As you can see, they're tying it back to Manana as well, who we actually started with.
Which Shoni was resonating with a while ago. Shoni, let's hear you first.
Well, Makhosi Khoza had the moral high ground all along. Why did she have to go and muddy the waters by insulting those other MPs?
Yeah.
It was unnecessary. She should have kept the moral high ground, as I said, and actually, but now people are beginning to wonder, is she the person we think she is? But obviously, the actions of the MPs, in my view, cannot be condoned at all.
Dominique, what do you think?
No, my take is that she might have been critical. She might have been that voice of reason within the ANC, but I think there was an element of overreach on her part. She still needs to play within the rules of the organization because she has been signed by the organization. I'm not saying that when she took oath as an MP representing South Africans, but still, there's an element of her being a member of the ANC. So the ANC had to act, but whether they acted accordingly, because of now the public knows everything. So each and every step that the ANC takes, the public will always have its own views on it.
Let's just give our viewers the URL because we run out of time.
Yeah, if everyone, people want to see more on, they can go to sabc.co.za /news.
All right. Well, coming up after the break, ANC fight Dr. Makhosi Khoza, ANC KZN court battle, more ANC matters when we return. Stay tuned to Media Monitor.
What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it the advice of our elders? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
Well, a very good morning and welcome to AM News live at 10:00 hours across all Central Africa regions.
A fitting send-off for a revolutionary giant, a life dedicated in service of the people.
The result means that the Swallows are out of the ABC Municipal League and drop to the amateur fourth tier of South African football, the SAB League.
Tune in on AM News every Saturday and Sunday from 10 hours.
And we're back with Media Monitor to the main news now. The ANC has fired Rebel MP Makhosi Khoza as chairperson of Parliament's Public Service and Administration's Portfolio Committee. Now, this comes because of, quote, irretrievable breakdown of trust between her and members of her committee, close quote. The ANC statement from the Chief Whip's office read. Earlier this week, ANC MPs boycotted a meeting of the committee under Khoza's leadership, allegedly because of Khoza's outspokenness in favor of a motion of no confidence against President Jacob Zuma. The statement further states that Khoza remains the party MP, pending, of course, the outcome of a disciplinary action to be taken against her by the party. And early this week, the ANC announced its intention to discipline at least 3 MPs who publicly announced that they would be voting in support of the motion of no confidence against President Jacob Zuma that took place in Parliament last week. Meanwhile, the ANC's alliance partners, COSATU and the SACP, have both condemned the ruling party's decision to fire Khoza. In other related news, the battle lines have been clearly drawn between ANC leaders in KwaZulu-Natal. A group that lost the 2015 elective conference have now held the current provincial executive committee before the Pietermaritzburg High Court, calling for the outcome of the conference to be annulled. And they claim that the NEC failed to intervene in concerns that were raised around the branches ahead of that particular gathering. Now, judgment in that case, which could see the current African National Congress KwaZulu-Natal leadership being dissolved, has since been reserved. Let's find out more on this clip.
I had anticipated that they were going to do that. The ANC is finding truth very hard to swallow, and the ANC would rather be comfortable with lies, would rather be comfortable with corruption, would rather be comfortable with betraying the mission of its historic mission of liberating Africans in particular, who are trapped even to this day in poverty, unemployment and inequality.
What are other reasons that were actually stated when they told you that you have been removed now?
They told me that the relationship between myself and the members of the committee has broken down irrevocably. I was also told that I'm no longer trusted because I follow my moral conscience. And if I am fired because I follow my moral conscience, so be it.
Dominique, let's talk about the events leading to the axing of Dr. Makhosi Khoza. Are they just and fair reasons to have her fired?
I think, I was expecting the ANC to have acted even much earlier. Following the vote of no confidence, even before that. She was a thorn, within the ANC. Even the chief whip, Mr. Jackson Mthembu, tried to speak to her privately. But I think she took a decision that she's not going to keep quiet. She took a decision that she will follow her conscience, but the ANC operates in another, I will say, in another space. The ANC at some point, I've said it before in this platform, that the ANC sometimes still behaves as if it's still a liberation organization, is out of the country. They fail to judge the mood of the people that they are trying to lead. So Dr. Makhosi Khoza, I think it was expected. But for her to be removed as chair of the committee, this tit-for-tat kind of a game, because at first they boycotted the hearing. Yeah. So it was clear that they were sending a message to say that we are not going to be led by her. So finally, for the ANC to give an instruction to the chief whip to remove her, it sends a very bad message. But I'm not surprised. It's like we're back into 2007, before the famous one, the Polokwane conference. This was happening. MPs were doing their own things. The ANC at that time was battling to contain, the rebellion. Yeah. And you remember that also a deputy minister at that time was fired, for defying President Thabo Mbeki. So we're back into that space. And I can tell you that 3 months ahead of December, we're still going to see more chaos within the ANC.
Does that mean more axings, Shani?
Well, I guess it depends on whether one is towing the line or not. One of the leading daily papers had a great story, which they put it like this. Imagine you're a member of a mafia family, and one time during dinner, you suddenly tell the mafia, and you're a made man, and you tell the head of the family that you no longer like the way things are being done. What do you expect is going to happen to you? In the mafia speak, they will work you. And in political space, they'll probably just make sure that you don't play a significant role within the movement.
But let's listen to what the caucus boss Jackson Mthembu said there. He said she was fired solely because of the breakdown in relationship between her and the members of her parliamentary committee. Do you agree with that statement?
No. There's even more. I will take that the chief whip is trying to micromanage the whole process, but we all know what is happening. She has been this vocal person that everyone is trying to say, maybe she can just disappear, and be, sent abroad, so that we remove her from this space of her always, revealing secrets and always challenging the authority of the ANC. But what Dr. Makhosi Khoza failed maybe to link is that she operates within the rules and regulations of the ANC. Yeah. She's there on behalf of the ANC. So for her being critical, it's good for the public to have such MPs, who are going to stand their ground. But at the end of the day, we must remember that she's not there as a free agent.
Absolutely.
She's there on a ticket of a political party.
Well, I beg to differ there. She was sent by the ANC, but she, took an oath of, when she became an MP in Parliament, which means she automatically started acting in the best interests of South Africans.
Yeah.
So, when she's faced with a difficult challenge like this, where she has to choose between the party and the country, I am glad that she actually chose the country as opposed to the party.
But gentlemen, wasn't there already a process to discipline Dr. Makhosi Khoza that was actually announced before the motion of no confidence vote was actually conducted? And then was this necessary here for her to be fired and for her sitting to be boycotted?
Yeah, no, you must remember that the battle lines have been drawn. I mean, also this action is part of a process not only to humiliate her, but also to send message to others that if you become vocal, this is what is likely to happen to you.
And how is that going to fix any problems that the ruling party has?
It's not going
if we're going to silence, some of those voices within the organization that are saying, listen, we need to listen to what the people are saying and maybe start doing something about the people's concerns.
Yeah, the people's concerns will always be addressed, but you must remember that coming back to your point, in South Africa we operate on the system of a party-based system. So even if you are an MP, you owe allegiance to South Africans. Yeah. That's well and good, but you take instructions from your political party.
Absolutely.
Even the opposition parties in parliament, they will discipline their members if they go against what the party decided. So we should not, put our MPs into a difficult space to say once they take an oath of office, fine, they are there to serve South Africans, but at the end of the day, political parties have got policy directives, and those policy directives get discussed by various political parties. So those MPs will have to push those political directives. I'm not saying that what Dr. Makhosi Khoza did was wrong. We need, such kind of MPs. Yeah. But at the end of the day, the reality is that political parties still have, power over their MPs.
And I will agree with Dominic on many other things around political party policies. But here, it's about the future of the country, at stake. I expected MPs to act more in the best of interest of the country and South Africans rather than party. It wasn't an issue of debating policy when it comes to that motion. Yeah. It was purely an issue of, can we afford as South Africa to continue to be led by this person? And they should, it's clear, they all, during the arguments on the motion itself, no one was saying actually, no. The president is great. You just don't get him. No, everybody was saying we're not going to take instructions from the opposition. Nobody was, arguing that the man is not good for that position. So clearly they should have voted,
But gentlemen,
as they argued.
But let's move on to another story that is related to this. And Dominic, I'm glad you mentioned the policy directive, the party policy directives. I mean, what about this the court battle between the ANC members and the NEC in KwaZulu-Natal? Doesn't this also speak to that very same issue that we're saying the ANC needs to find a solution on ways to dealing with their matters and not take each other? It looks weird. ANC members are taking the ANC NEC to court. I mean, how does that sound?
You remember before the unbanning of the ANC and other political parties, joining the ANC, it was a question of a sacrifice. Yeah. Now they're in government. There's money, there's patronage, there's all sorts of things. So the stakes are high. So I'm not surprised by this court challenges happening in KZN. We're still going to see more in other provinces. And I expect that Northwest will be the second province that ANC, it will be ANC versus ANC, and also in other provinces. So I can tell you that the center in the ANC is no longer holding because of now there's more at stake. And as we move towards December, people are going to interdict conferences, people are going to interdict RECs, people are going to almost interdict each and every element within the ANC because of they want to influence the December outcome of who takes over after President Jacob Zuma.
Shoni, please tell me, should now the applicants win in this case? I mean, this was a 2015 conference. Those decisions were already taken and implemented. What good is it going to do for the party? Are we going to backtrack? I mean, how will it all play out? And Dominic, I want you to also give us your assumptions of how everything might play out in case the applicants actually win.
Well, already I think there's an issue directly, relating to Makhosi's situation. Yeah. How do they deal with that? Because clearly, if the structure is proved to be illegitimate, do you reverse only those decisions, or how far back do you go?
Exactly.
I really don't know. But to Dominic's point, I think it's clear that the silly season is in full swing, and we're still going to see fireworks.
The silly season, quickly, Dom.
It's going to be a chaos. I mean, I think the ANC, because of in that court case in KZN, the people who are cited there is the president of the party and the secretary general. Yeah. For them to be cited in such a case, it also shows that the frustrations on the ground. So hence, I'm saying that we're still going to see more. And if that case is going to favor those who lost the conference, then it's going to simply, muddy the waters. It's also going to create problems. That might lead to maybe the December conference being postponed.
Well, we're going to find out after the break what is currently happening at the SADC. We're going to get those highlights when Media Monitor returns. Do stay with us. Welcome back. The SADC summit comes to an end today. The SADC meeting discussed among issues of peace and security in the region, trade and investment. For more on this, let's get a live understanding from our foreign editor, Sophie Mokoena, who is joining us straight from the summit venue in Pretoria. Sophie, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with the issue that dominated the news, even though it was not on the agenda. Where is Zimbabwean First Lady Grace Mugabe?
Grace Mugabe is back in Harare, is back in Zimbabwe. She is back in Zimbabwe. It is expected that she is likely to attend the funeral of one of the veterans of ZANU-PF, a lady who passed on Maofe last week. But fortunately, we also got confirmation from a reliable source that indeed she was granted immunity yesterday, I think, and therefore she is back in Harare. She went back home.
But Sophie, as we understand it, isn't that type of immunity only afforded to the heads of states and not the first ladies?
There are conflicting reports in terms of what was supposed to happen, but we expect the International Relations Department to clarify the matter, or the South African government through the relevant department to clarify the matter. And of course, the relevant department in this case, it will be the Department of International Relations. And I suspect that it is for that reason, even the SADC meeting, the closes, has been scheduled to start much earlier rather than the afternoon. Perhaps South Africa would want to deal with all these issues now. But reports are that South Africa is expected to issue a statement only tomorrow. But I think tomorrow will be too late. I guess many journalists right now are making inquiries, and South African government will be compelled to explain how did they arrive at this decision. But she's gone. She's in Harare. We have a crew in Harare. As we indicated even last week as SABC front desk that she didn't leave South Africa. President Mugabe joined her on Wednesday, and we will continue to report the facts around this. And our crew today will be at the Heroes Acre, where this funeral will get underway in an hour's time, and will give an update in terms of what's happening, whether she will appear. We expect both Grace Mugabe and President Robert Mugabe to be at the funeral, but also the Vice President, Emerson Mnangagwa, was released from hospital yesterday, who also flew back to Harare yesterday at that funeral.
All right. Okay, now, Sophie, let's look at the summit itself. Maybe take us through some of the interesting highlights that have come out from the summit.
What is important is that the issue of peace and security, again, is key for the SADC region, because you cannot have prosperity unless you have peace and stability. And the tension in DRC, the current process in Lesotho, where you would recall that there was a commission that was set up, Pumapi Commission, that made recommendations in terms of the changes that are supposed to take place in Lesotho. They have decided that there should be a committee that will be constituted of the technocrats who will ensure the implementation of every decision or recommendation from the Pumapi Commission. You are aware that our Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa is the mediator in Lesotho, but of course you need someone or people who can be there on the ground or constantly be available to ensure that the reform are implemented, particularly on the issues of the Constitution and also the security cluster.
All right. Now, Sophie, we know that, of course, South Africa, or in this case, President Jacob Zuma, is the new incoming chair of the SADC committee. Do tell us maybe what are some of the responsibilities that the chairing nation actually has?
You have to ensure that whatever the summit has agreed upon is, or all those agreements are implemented, and therefore President Zuma will have to ensure that whatever resolutions they have adopted here, which we will know later today, are implemented. But also you have to ensure that you continuously strengthen the institution, because SADC is very important. It's a regional body. And for the continent to prosper, regional integration is important. Yeah. For that reason, the issue of trade and investment was also high on the agenda. Movements of people, goods and services, one of the key issues, which is very, very difficult to agree on, because every country has its own immigration and internal rules. But they are working very hard to ensure that the regional integration does happen. So we'll be looking at what are the recommendations on issues of peace and security, looking at the DRC and Lesotho in particular. You are aware also when you look at countries such as Mozambique, they'll be going to elections, local government elections. Yeah. Angola will be having elections in 2 weeks' time. These are the issues that we are likely to perhaps form part, issues that are likely to form part of the resolutions taken here at this summit. And President Zuma, of course, the new chair, he is going to address the summit today as the summit comes to an end. And the tone of the speech will give an indication in terms of what will be the priorities for South Africa as the incoming chair. Thank you, Sophie. We'll definitely get in touch with you later on our bulletins. So do stay tuned. That's our foreign editor, Sophie Mokoena, who's out at in Pretoria, of course, at the SADC summit. Gentlemen, let's talk about some of the measures that were discussed, Dominique, to actually expedite this intra-trade that we've been talking about and regional integration. I mean, at this stage, it's still just talk. We haven't seen really much action being afforded to those resolutions.
Yeah, it has been a frustrating process over the years because of we get all these nice resolutions coming out of SADC summit meetings, but at the end of the day, the implementation part of it is the one that is frustrating. I mean, not only SADC, also other regional sections. You know, you talk of the East Africa ECOWAS. The frustration is the implementation part of it. Yeah. But for SADC, I was hoping that would have been now in an advanced stage, you know, question of making sure that our borders are managed properly. Absolutely. And then goods and services, you know, the movement of goods and services is not cumbersome. But we're still facing a situation where even if I go to Lesotho, I know that I will spend an hour or so battling, you know, with funny things. Yeah. Funny things, paperwork, unnecessary paperwork. In fact, I should just drive in. Absolutely. That but African passport. The frustration part of it is that the resolutions are okay. The resolutions are encouraging. But when it comes to implementation, that's where we're failing. Very quickly, Shawnee, they're going to kill me. What do you think? I mean, we even have the National Development Bank that is now launched in Johannesburg. Absolutely. I mean, intertrade on the continent still sits at around 12%, which is far below, you know, in places like Europe and North America, for instance. So we really need to capitalize on this, because that is, for me, a low-hanging fruit in terms of getting African economies on the go. All right. Well, that's all we had time for on that topic. After the break, Public Protector has lost her bid to change the Reserve Bank's mandate. Has this ruling tarnished her image? Find out shortly after this break. You're watching Media Monitor here on the SABC News channel. The South African Reserve Bank was vindicated this past week at the North Gauteng High Court, where the bank won its application to have the Public Protector's remedial action to change its constitutional mandate set aside. The court found, amongst others, that the Public Protector's recommendations encroached unconstitutionally and irrationally on Parliament's exclusive authority, as she does not have the power to prescribe to Parliament how to exercise its legislative power. Mkhwebane ordered that the bank's mandate to be changed to ensure the socio-economic well-being of citizens and to
achieve socio-economic transformation. Parliament has since welcomed the ruling. Mkhwebane was ordered by the High Court to pay costs for the application, up to and including the filing of her answering affidavit and the employment of her 2 counsels. Let's take a look at this quick insert.
The mandate of the Reserve Bank is spelled out in the Constitution, and that is what we had always argued for. And it is one of the original constitutional principles, and the courts have confirmed that, have decided to set aside the remedial action of the Public Protector, and we welcome that.
The recommendation made by the Public Protector can be seen by an economist as actually jeopardizing her image and basically showing her up as not having enough knowledge of economics. Because if you abandon the fight against inflation and you say, let's go for growth, doesn't matter what inflation does, before long you're going to find yourself facing a huge inflationary spiral, and then you will be obliged to actually backtrack and raise interest rates dramatically, which will actually be even worse for the man in the street.
Very interesting. Lisa Chahanyaho had no worries going into that court ruling. I just want to know, I mean, has the image of the Public Protector then been tarnished there, Dominique?
I mean, let's start with one factor first. Law 101, it says that for the Constitution of South Africa to be changed or amended, there must be a 2/3 majority in Parliament. It doesn't talk about Chapter 9 institutions. It doesn't talk about other organizations that can willy-nilly, try and change the Constitution. So I was shocked. I mean, here I am, Dominic Mahlangu. I'm not, a legal expert, but the little that I know tells me that only Parliament, and even in Parliament, the ANC today can't change the Constitution up until they get a 2/3 majority. So here the Public Protector comes, makes that bold decision. I was telling my colleague here to say that maybe she wanted to come into the office with a bang, but the bang became a nuclear bomb that has tarnished her image completely. Because of going forward, the public now will be so skeptical, of her decisions.
I was about to ask.
Yeah, so I think she will have to go back to the drawing board, and people are correct to ask questions, to say, here you go, you want to make bold decisions, but we've got so much that is happening, the state capture allegations and all those cases. Why are you not starting with those cases? But I think her image will need serious repair going forward.
Gentlemen, it brings back that whole question that we had a whole debacle around on the review of course, the separation of powers when it comes to the Public Protector and, of course, the government entities. What is your reading into this whole matter? Where did she misunderstand what her fiduciary duties actually were? Shani?
Well, I think the High Court, even then, was pretty clear that, yes, her pronouncements, or let's say her ruling, is binding, subject
the
to
remedial
being
action,
yes, unless they're set aside by a court of law. And so even then, she should have known that, by the way, I can't just go and pronounce and as I see fit, especially on issues around, economics, where there are huge consequences, because obviously, the rand took a huge note, shares at the stock exchange, also there was a massive sellout. I think we lost about 50 billion rands around that period. So it was naivety, across the board. From a legal, economic point of view. I don't know what she was on about. I don't know if anybody does.
But a lot of people are saying maybe she should have just focused on getting that money back from Bankorp and not actually suggest that the mandate of the Reserve Bank be changed. Shani, Dominique?
My take, Alicia, on this matter is that not only did she get the wrong advice, but I think the timing of this whole
it was
court
also
case.
Questionable.
I mean, she rushed to come up with recommendations. I think it was an ongoing case that needed even more time. I mean, I'm not saying that as a Public Protector, her mandate is not to look into issues of monies, and all of that. But I think the management of the case itself, it was rushed. The decisions were wrong. You remember when the whole thing was communicated to the public. They tried to say at some point it was a typo. I don't know, a typo. Where did it fit in and all of that? So it shows that the whole process was rushed. And the public, you know what political parties and other institutions in this country fail to understand now. We've got a very, very critical public.
Yeah.
South Africans are vocal. South Africans can challenge you. I mean, you can ask the president. The president, I mean, knows that when South Africans challenge him, they will challenge him.
Absolutely. Shawnee?
Yeah, so, you know, even on the Bankorp issue, to me, that case was pretty clear because I think the commission, or was it the commission, I can't remember, the committee that was set up to actually investigate, came out with a clear ruling that the real beneficiary here was actually Sanlam policyholders.
Yes.
And it will be very difficult for us to recover that money from those people.
Yeah.
You know, and so instead of going for, you know, Sanlam, she went for, obviously, at the time, as you said, Dominic, that there was, everyone was gunning for the bank. So it seemed like it was an easy way of pleasing, perhaps, the public and pleasing some other, you know, bosses who are sitting elsewhere.
So now people are calling for her to resign, saying that she's not probably fit to hold office. Dominic, do you think it's too early for us to judge her? Should we give her another try? South
Africa is a very political country. I mean, if she can't stand the heat, if she can't stand the heat from the public, I mean, her work will be difficult going forward because of the public will keep on knocking at that door to say, are you competent enough to hold that office? You remember, she took over from a person who was a darling of the South African public. So the stakes are too high. The previous public protector set the bar too high. So the expectations are that she must not only maintain the bar at that level, but she must actually take it even much higher. But the first case, what did she do? She took the bar and buried it. You know, now there's no longer a standard that we can measure her on.
Quite frankly, you know, if we're now living in a country where it looks like the legislature is incapable of holding the executive to account.
Yeah.
We need a public protector who can actually, you know, help as far as matters like that are concerned in terms of protecting the public.
Yeah.
And if she's failing so dismally, I think she should go.
I mean, the financial institutions are saying that, she must stay away from the work of financial institutions because this would destabilize the economy. It's very interesting indeed. After the break, we take a look at the Marikana commemorations 5 years after the tragedy. What has changed for the lives of those concerned? Find out after this break.
Brilliant score. Imran Tahir produced a superb performance with the ball. The Proteas leg spinner put his side in the driving seat, scalping 3 wickets for just 18 runs.
Gifton Gope is flying toward third, and he is there with a triple, his first in the big leagues.
It is a Ferrari front row lockout, unless Hamilton can get on pole, and he can't. Ferrari, for the first time since France in 2008, have locked out the front row.
For all your sports news, keep it locked to Sports Live every Saturday and Sunday from 20:30.
Well, this week marked the 5th anniversary of the Marikana massacre that claimed the lives of 34 miners and wounding scores of others while protesting for the increment to their wages. Today we asked whether there has been any transformation to the lives of the surviving miners, the widows and the relatives of the deceased miners. But first, here's a quick look at this clip.
The massacre in post-democratic South Africa. And 5 years on, the wounds of August 12, 2012 are far from healed. He says they are here to fight for what their late brothers fought for. All they want is change. While a fund has been set up to assist surviving families, government was lambasted for failing to compensate them.
There has been no justice in Marikana in the past 5 years. It's a disgrace that we are talking about 5 years and yet not a single cent has been paid in compensation to our people.
Arrests have been made in connection with the killings that preceded the massacre, but no police officer has been held accountable for the deaths.
Amandla! 16 August must be like June 16, because there is nothing different between June 16 and Sharpeville Day and Marikana Day.
They will never put a compensation fund because they will admit that they killed our people today.
Half a decade since the tragedy, AMCU President Joseph Mathunjwa has called for the legacy of the Marikana 34 to inspire change.
5 years later, our communities still suffer without proper housing and proper basic services. There is still a lot to be done, comrades. The journey may be long, comrades, with many, many challenges to be overcome. However, nothing will deter us.
The surviving families and widows of the deceased also attended the commemorations. Simply English, SABC News, Marikana.
What still needs to happen in regards to the whole Marikana massacre debacle, Dominique?
I think what we need is for everyone to tell the truth, because of the truth is still eluding South Africans. No one is in prison. No one is facing a court of law. All that we got were recommendations from the commission that actually nailed the police boss, Ms. Ria Pierre. But this story is not going to go away. Government can try all sorts of strategies and everything, as long as even during the week when there was this commemoration, government was missing in action. They were not there. So it simply tells us again, as the public, that there is us and them. This government should take over and be part of the solutions. The people are still hurting. You know, that is why I say that it's not going to go away. And I can tell you that going forward, the history of Marikana is going to define, the history of the ANC post 1994.
You know, very interestingly enough, Dominique, this has now somehow turned into a political issue. It's so politicized that we heard even Cyril Ramaphosa was actually barred from attending this year's commemoration. But we know in the previous years that government was saying that they were not invited, and they were actually told that they cannot be accommodated at this particular commemoration. So then where does government start in bridging that gap and trying to find the missing middle and finding a way to get to those widows, get to the miners that were affected, get to everybody that was affected by this massacre?
I don't think that's very difficult. You've got representatives of unions, representatives of communities. So put those people in a room and then talk to them about how the compensation process ought to be administered, because obviously most people want to, there are people who might want to take advantage of this situation and suddenly put themselves on the list. But, how do you make sure that you get to the people who were really affected? That is not a difficult thing to do.
Absolutely.
In fact, I do believe that Cyril Ramaphosa did make mention of the fact that, he would like, he's basically open to engaging. He just wants, obviously, the right platform, so that, things are done properly. So there's certainly willingness from certain members of government. I don't know if government overall, I don't even know if this is something that needs to sit at the office of the deputy president.
That's
necessarily.
what I wanted to know.
But, clearly there's Msebenzi Zwane, involved in mining, but clearly focusing on other things, empowering other blacks. We're here. But this is something that where he would probably need to be driving this issue, because it sits squarely in his area of responsibility, in my view. Even though he wasn't there when this tragedy happened,
but gentlemen,
he should be facilitating the conversation.
My biggest issue is that the political parties that we've seen campaign around this Marikana massacre, they talk about compensation as like it will solve all the problems that are underlying when it comes to what those workers that actually died there were raising. Is this the right narrative, the correct narrative for those political parties to bring into the fore and play with the hopes of those people there, Dominique?
I mean, they will continue playing politics as long long as they get the mileage out of it, because for them to keep the story of saying blame the ANC, blame the government of President Jacob Zuma, it plays into the narrative. So you can't fault them. They are doing what they are supposed to do. But my disappointment is with government. It doesn't mean that whatever that you need to do for the people of Marikana and the relatives and the families, it must be in public. Start doing work behind the scenes. Start changing the face of Marikana. You know, every time I drive to Marikana, it's still the same. Nothing, in fact, it's getting worse in terms of the living conditions. So why government is not behind the scenes without inviting us as journalists?
And not on a day they're commemorating the killings. I mean, on any given day.
Just change the face of Marikana to show that you are willing to listen to their concerns. But for government to say, no, we're not going to do anything because we have not been invited. Surely we are a government. You don't need to be invited to do things for South Africans. Because at the end of the day, people of Marikana are not people of EFF, they are not people of DA, they are not people of the opposition. They are South Africans. And government has got a duty to make sure that regardless of whether they vote for EFF or others, they serve South Africans first.
Absolutely.
So I'm very much disappointed with how government is dealing with this matter.
Any lessons learned, Shani?
Well, I was going to say, in terms of the narrative that is missing, you know, our mining sector is shrinking. You know, in the past couple of weeks, some of the big players have announced that they're going to be slashing jobs left, right, center.
Jobs
and this is the reason why we had Marikana to begin with. Remember, people were asking for a decent living wage, 12.5, I think it was. And obviously that story, that narrative has disappeared, and instead we have a mining charter that most people are saying it's responsible for the shrinking jobs in the in the sector.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and sound analysis this morning. My analysts in studio this morning, Mr. Shani Makari as well as Mr. Dominic Mahlango, giving us their views on what they thought about some of the biggest developing stories of this week. Thank you at home for watching our show, Media Monitor. We hope that you will join us again, same time and place next week. That is right here on the SABC News channel. I'm back on top of the hour with A News, so don't go anywhere.